Nia opened her phone to check her calendar and froze. 4 notifications, 4 different apps, 4 payments, all due within 6 weeks of each other. None of them were on her budget. None of them were charging interest. And somehow, that made it worse. She sat there, staring at the screen, trying to remember what she'd even bought. A coat, skincare, maybe trainers? It didn't feel like debt when she clicked pay in 4. It felt like permission. But now, looking at the total, it felt like something else entirely. Something older than the apps made it look. Nia's situation isn't unusual. Buy now, pay later has become so frictionless, so embedded in checkout pages, that it doesn't register as borrowing anymore. It registers as flexibility, as adult decision-making, as a smarter way to manage cash flow. The apps don't call it credit. They call it splitting payments. They don't mention debt. They mention convenience. And honestly, it works. Because when you're standing at checkout, physical or digital, and the total feels just slightly too high, and then a little box appears offering to cut that number into 4 smaller, friendlier pieces, it feels like relief. It feels like control. Nia had used 4 different platforms over 2 months. A winter coat on one, skincare on another, gym gear, a small furniture item she'd been eyeing for weeks. Each purchase was justified in the moment. Each one felt manageable. But she hadn't been tracking them collectively. She hadn't written them down. The apps didn't talk to each other, so her brain didn't connect them either. And now, mid-month, she was looking at 4 overlapping payment schedules with 0 room for error. If anything unexpected happened, a car repair, a friend's birthday, even just needing to replace a broken phone charger, she'd have to choose. Pay the installment or handle the surprise. That's not flexibility, that's exposure. And here's the thing, none of this felt like debt when she was clicking through. It felt modern. It felt like she was being smart with her money. The reason buy now, pay later feels so reasonable is because the framing is perfect. You're not borrowing, you're spreading, you're not in debt, you're managing cash flow like a financially literate adult. The payment is interest-free, so there's no penalty for using it. The approval is instant, so there's no judgment. The interface is clean, the language is friendly, and the whole experience feels like the opposite of a predatory payday loan. It feels like progress. And in isolation, each installment plan is manageable. 4 payments of £25 is easier than £100 today. That's just math. The problem isn't the individual decision. The problem is that you're making the individual decision 4 times across 4 platforms with 4 separate mental budgets that never consolidate. Your brain treats each one like a standalone event, but your bank account treats them like a recurring obligation, an obligation stack. They don't stay isolated just because the apps do. This logic, this exact structure, isn't new. The language is new, the speed is new, but the financial architecture, it's old. Nearly a century old, actually. And the last time it became this popular, this embedded in everyday purchasing behavior, it didn't end with people feeling more in control. It ended with millions of families realizing they'd rented their future income without noticing. In the 1920s, American families were introduced to something revolutionary: installment credit. For the first time, ordinary people could buy big-ticket items, refrigerators, washing machines, cars, furniture, without having the full amount saved. You could pay a little now and take it home today. Retailers loved it because it moved inventory. Families loved it because it felt like access, like upward mobility, like finally being able to live the life they were working toward without waiting years to save up. And it worked for a while. A family could buy a refrigerator for $5 down and $2 a month, a car for $50 down and $15 a month, furniture, same thing. In isolation, each payment was affordable, manageable. The math made sense. $2 a month? That's nothing. But here's what happened. Families didn't stop at one installment plan. They took on 3, 4, 5, a fridge, a radio, a vacuum cleaner, a sofa, maybe a car. Each one justified, each one affordable on paper. But those payments didn't live in isolation. They lived in the same household budget. And they all came due in the same small window of time because credit terms back then were short. 12 months, 18 months, 2 years maximum. So by 1928, millions of American families were carrying multiple overlapping installment obligations. They weren't behind. They weren't defaulting. They were just stretched, tight, one unexpected expense away from trouble. And then 1929 happened. The stock market crashed. Unemployment spiked. Incomes dropped. And suddenly, all those small, manageable payments became impossible. Not because any single one was reckless, but because they'd stacked. Families had borrowed against future income that no longer existed. The installment plan had worked as long as tomorrow looked like today. But tomorrow didn't. And when tomorrow broke, so did the system. If you're finding this useful and you want more financial clarity like this, go ahead and hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't already, because we're unpacking these ideas every week. Now, back to Nia. The families who survived that period weren't the ones who earned the most. They were the ones who had kept space in their budgets, the ones who hadn't maxed out their future flexibility. Some had turned down installment offers even when they could technically afford the monthly payment. Others had paid off one obligation before starting another. A few had kept a written list, just a simple ledger of every installment they owed and when it was due. Not because they were paranoid, because they understood that obligating future income meant reducing future options. The lesson wasn't don't use credit. It was don't let credit use you. The families who stayed stable had built a buffer between what they earned and what they'd already promised to pay. They treated installment credit like a tool with a cost, even when that cost wasn't interest. The cost was flexibility. The cost was room to breathe when something went wrong. And something always went wrong. What's strange is how that wisdom got lost. Because the families who came out of the Depression didn't stop using credit. They just used it differently. They became obsessive about tracking it. They limited how many obligations they'd carry at once. They saved up partially before buying, so the installments were smaller and shorter. They didn't see frictionless credit as freedom. They saw it as a trade, future money for present goods. And they made that trade carefully, knowing that once you spend future money, it's gone. You can't spend it again when you actually arrive in that future. Nia's 4 buy now, pay later obligations aren't different in structure. They're just faster, smoother, quieter. The 1920s family had to go to a store, sign paperwork, and make a deliberate choice to enter into installment credit. Nia clicked a button at checkout, twice, 4 times. The friction was removed. And when friction is removed, decision-making changes. You're not weighing a financial trade-off anymore. You're just proceeding. But the math hasn't changed. 4 installment plans still mean 4 chunks of future income are already spoken for. If Nia earns £2,000 a month and has £200 in BNPL payments coming due, that's 10% of her income that's already been spent before the month even starts. That's not free money. That's rented cash flow. And the rental cost isn't interest. It's flexibility. It's the ability to say yes to something unexpected, to handle a crisis without panic, to breathe when life gets expensive, which it always does. The shift isn't about never using buy now, pay later. It's about seeing it clearly. It's credit, not a budgeting tool, not a hack, not a smarter way to shop. It's borrowing from a version of yourself who doesn't exist yet, future Nia. And future Nia might have different priorities, different emergencies, different expenses. When you obligate her income in advance, you're making a bet that her life will be stable, predictable, and exactly as expensive as today. That's a bad bet. The families in the 1920s learned this the hard way. They learned that the real cost of installment credit wasn't financial. It was psychological. It was waking up and realizing that a chunk of the money you were about to earn was already gone, that you'd traded future flexibility for present convenience, and that once you make that trade enough times, you stop feeling in control. You start feeling managed. Here's what Nia did, and what you can try for the next 14 days. Specific. Open your phone right now and write down every buy now, pay later payment you have scheduled. Not just the apps you remember using, all of them. Check your email for payment confirmations, check your bank statements, get the full picture. Measurable. Add those payments to your calendar as recurring events with the exact date and amount. Treat them like bills because they are. Achievable. Before making any new BNPL purchase, ask yourself, if I had to pay this in full today, would I still buy it? If the answer is no, don't split it. Realistic. Limit yourself to one active installment plan at a time. Finish one before starting another. Time-bound. Try this for 2 weeks. Just 14 days of tracking and limiting. No judgment. Just awareness. See how it feels to know exactly what future you has already promised to pay. And here's the quiet rebellion. You don't owe the algorithm your future income just because it made checkout easier. Buy now, pay later isn't evil. But it's not neutral either. It's a trade. Future flexibility for present access. And that trade only works if you're making it consciously, deliberately, with full awareness of what you're giving up. The 1920s families didn't fail because they were reckless. They failed because the system was designed to feel safe right up until it wasn't. The same is true now. The difference is you have time, you have information, you have the ability to see the pattern before it tightens. Nia looked at her 4 payments and realized something simple. She'd been spending money she hadn't earned yet. And once she stopped, once she let her income catch up to her obligations, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Space. Room to decide. Control. If you want me to make other videos explaining these topics, please like this video, subscribe to this channel for more smart insights, and click the notification bell so you don't miss any upcoming video. Thanks for watching.